When working with color, we must remember that we're working with pigments. We're not working with light. A visual artist has a variety of pigments available to them. Pigments reflect light. They absorb some wavelengths and reflect others. I believe that it's very best to start with a limited palette for any student painter and even advanced. Here I have titanium white, ultramarine blue, a red, I forget the name of it, it's a pretty solid straight red, and cadmium yellow light. With those three we have our primary, red, blue, red, yellow, and then we can make our secondaries very easy. Some blue and yellow, make a green pigment. A red and yellow, make an orange pigment. A blue and red, make a violet or a purple color, purple pigment. Now, just using these three plus white, we can make a variety of colors, and it also helps a very consistent painting. If you threw in some other kind of pigment that was totally unrelated to these, let's say a phthalo blue, into your water or something, it would look very out of place. The number one most important thing about a color when it's placed on your canvas or your composition is its value, how dark or light it is. Black is just a very dark color. It's actually a decent pigment to use in some situations. In white can be used to lighten things up, but it's not always the best idea to get carried away with too much white to lighten things up. In reality, black is the absence of light. It's where there would be no light reflected. And how do we get a pigment to do that? We basically just want to have a dark pigment. Here with my limited palette, ultramarine blue, like a cadmium red deep, or cad red, cad yellow light, mixing all three together makes a very dark pigment. And in nature, these are the types of shadows we're going to see. It could be warm or it could be cool. Adding a little more blue to it makes the darkness look cooler versus a very warm. And actually that's what I think of. If something is brown, it's a warm dark color. If something is gray, it's a cool dark color. But as I said, don't think of colors as in terms of brown or grays. Think of them, is it red? Is it blue? It's very dark. Is it yellow? One of those three, and how broken is it? How dark is it? The number one most important element about a color is its value. How dark is it or how light is it? We're working with a white palette here. Things look very dark because they're placed next to it, but all of a sudden something that might look like a very dark red doesn't look so dark compared to the darker color. But if I had a gray, dark cool blue palette, this would look extremely light. Anyway, so the darkness of a color is the most important thing. In other words, so we want to lighten up the blue. In this case, we're going to have to add some white. If I was working with a very large palette, different colors, I could add cerulean blue to lighten it up. Its value, how dark is it? How light is it? The most important thing. We'll notice that the yellow in its pure strength can be actually darker than a blue. It depends on how light the blue is, the value. So the value of a color, how dark it is compared to what it's next to, is the most important thing. And your whole painting is what shows composition. Is it a very dark red or is it a very light red? But what it's placed to there again is most important. This light red may not look all that light as compared to a light blue that's next to it. A very light blue. All of a sudden you have a very dark looking red compared to a very light blue. So what's number one most important in a color, your pigments that you're working with, is its value, how dark it is, how light it is, and that has everything to do with what it's placed next to. Look at how dark this almost looks. Black. It looks like there's no light at all, but all of a sudden we could lighten it up. There we have what some people would call a cool gray, but really it's just a cool broken blue, very broken. And all of a sudden it still looks very light compared to this very dark warm, but compared to the very light blue, it's very dark. One of the qualities of color is its chroma. How intense is it in its pure strength? This is its most intense you can get. The most intense blue, you can add a little white to it and you'll see right away it's a very intense blue color. The chroma is high. Some people call it intensity, others chroma. It's pretty much the same thing. Now, to make nice compositions, I thoroughly believe one of the best things to do is work with broken colors. When I say broken, I mean the chroma is low, the intensity is low. How do we get the intensity to be low? Well, what you do is you add some of the colors opposite. So the opposite of blue is orange, the opposite of red is green, the opposite of yellow is purple. So let's break down this yellow so we could have a nice field, let's say of golden color wheat, but we don't want it to be all high key, just intensely yellow. So let's add some violet to it. And right away we see it starts to become what people might call brown. I don't like to think of colors as being brown or gray. I like to think of it, is it blue, is it red, is it yellow? Right away we see this color some people might call brown. I say it's a broken yellow. And right away we could have a very nice, what might be considered yellow ochre, a broken yellow. And then the same thing, you could go with the violet and just break it just a little bit with some of the yellow, and all of a sudden it becomes a dull violet, or you might consider just a brown color. Now the color relates to temperature. Does it look cool or does it look warm? But it has everything to do with what it's placed next to. So let's work with some broken blue, and as I said, the opposite of blue is orange. So let's take a little orange and add it to our blue, and right away we see it, there again it looks brown, but it's not, it's just broken blue. And this might make nice shadows in the wheat field. But we have very consistent color harmony because we're working with only 3 pigments. Same thing if you take the orange and add just a small amount of the blue to it, it becomes a broken orange. And when you have a lot of broken colors and then all of a sudden you put one small splash of a high intensity color next to it, boy, it really jumps out. So work with your paintings, your compositions with a lot of broken colors. Now let's take a look at the red. What do we do to break the red? We add some of its opposite. Opposite of red is green. So take a little bit of the green and add it to the red, and all of a sudden it's a very broken looking, almost muddy red. Some people call it, it could be a very red brown, but it's, think of the main colors, red, green, orange, purple. Is it broken or is it intense? The intensity of the color is very important. Also temperature. The temperature, here's a very cool blue. We consider it cool, but you place some of this next to it. Now we have a very warm blue because it's got more orange in it. It looks warm because of what it's next to. And you see that enhanced by when you add white. You get such an enormous amount of variety. 3 pigments plus white is all you need, and you could make almost any color imaginable. So remember, the most important rule about a color is its value. And the value is determined by how dark it is or how light it is, and everything has to do with what it's placed next to.